Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today titled Inside the Editor's Office, Launching a Sustainable Open Access Journal. Today we're going to be discussing some of the steps scholars looking to start an open access journal should take to ensure their publication has staying power. With us today we have Yale University professor Olav Sorensen, editor of Sociological Science, which launched in September 2013, and University of Buffalo librarians Amy Vill and Molly Poremski, editors of The Reading Room, which launched just a couple of weeks ago. So to start, I wanted to ask you guys to all give a brief introduction to your journal. Tell us what are the aims and scopes of your publication and what is it that makes it unique. Molly and Amy, I wanted to start with you. Can you tell us a bit about The Reading Room?
Sure. I'll go first, I guess. Well, we just launched The Reading Room, and it is a journal for special collections librarians or people involved with special collections. And library literature is a little funny. We're our own sort of beast. And there are journals out there for regular academic librarianship, archives, and there hasn't been anything for special collections librarians. And when I mean special collections, I'm talking about it does include university archives, but rare book collections, special unique collections, maybe living at historical societies or museums, or sometimes corporate environments like Coca-Cola has its own library, its own special collection at the corporate headquarters. And we are providing a place for people involved with special collections to publish peer-reviewed academic articles pertaining to their collections, what they're doing with them, also case studies, research articles, yeah, so that's The Reading Room, and we're brand new, so it's been a fun few weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure. We're excited to have you guys as a perspective of such a new journal. And Olav, to turn it over to you, could you tell us a bit about Sociological Science?
Sure. So Sociological Science just celebrated its 1-year anniversary, so we've been going just a little bit longer. We think of ourselves as being a general sociology journal, and we like to think of ourselves as hopefully competing against the top 2 traditional paper journals in sociology. So a journal that's of interest to all sociologists, but one in which we recognize that most contributions are going to be by specialists, for specialists, but hopefully will also speak to a larger audience.
Awesome. And we're excited to have you guys as the perspective of, a sort of more long-standing journal. To start, I'll go straight into our questions here. I wanted to talk a bit about internal process and how you guys set up your editorial boards. So, Olav, to start with you, could you talk a bit about how you set up a publishing plan? And I know that Sociological Science is unique in that you're able to make your publication decisions in 30 days or less. That's really impressive. Could you explain to us how you're able to achieve such a fast turnover time and why it's important to you?
Yeah, so we thought that in order to really compete against established traditional journals, it was important not just to be open access. I mean, I think that's great, but we really felt like we needed to offer a different value proposition to authors, and having a very fast turnaround time. In sociology, the average time between submitting a paper, maybe getting a first-round review might be anywhere from 4 to 6 months. Then there might be a second or third round review. In total, the time between submitting the paper to the journal and actually seeing it in print could easily be 3 years. And we thought, let's do something really different. Let's try to really create a very fast turnaround time. Now, doing that is not without its difficulties. One of the reasons why it takes traditional journals so long is that they are reliant on reviewers, and normally they're asking people just sort of over the transom for reviews, and they have to wait for those reviewers to read the papers and get back to them. What we decided to do in order to enable the type of quick turnaround model that we have is have peer review, but peer review that's essentially all done by editors. We have a couple of different levels of editors. So we have an editor-in-chief, we have deputy editors, and then we have associate editors. And essentially the associate editors are our reviewers, but what we do is that we've sort of pre-qualified them in the sense that we've told them the whole model for this journal is to get quick decisions. So if you're going to join our editorial board, then we expect that at least 5 or 6 times a year you're going to be willing to turn around a manuscript for us in less than 2 weeks, right? And having that promise from them ahead of time, I think, means that they give us priority when they're actually doing the reviews. And so far, it's been great. We've managed to get every single manuscript had a decision made within 30 days, and our average review time is someplace between 11 and 12 days overall. The other thing that's been crucial to making this model work is having a very high level of desk rejects, and also changing a little bit the nature of the review process. So, as I said, we don't have a revise and resubmit category, and therefore we can both ask reviewers to write very short letters for us and give very short feedback back to authors. Now, that's not to say there's not a place for the more traditional developmental review. But for authors that would like a quick turnaround and a quick answer, that's what we promise to give them. Within 30 days, they'll either be accepted or rejected.
It's very impressive that you guys are able to do that. And I'm wondering, when you started the journal, was this process something that you initiated from the beginning, or is this something that you guys sort of worked out as you were starting the publication and going through your first submission period?
No, so this is something that we developed as a model before we ever started accepting submissions. So we wanted to do something different, and we spent a lot of time thinking about what the right way to organize the editorial process would be in order to enable us to make these very fast decisions. So that's been there from day one, and we haven't really changed any of the ways in which that's worked from the beginning.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. It seems solid for you guys right now. I'm sure in the future as well. And Molly and Amy, I wanted to ask you, you're a newer journal, obviously. Have you decided on your publishing and editorial process yet, or are you still sort of working out what that will be? Where are you guys at with that?
Well, I guess I'll address the editorial board. So right now, Amy and I are the only ones listed on the editorial board, and our hopes are that after our first issue, we'll be able to establish people that we liked, peer reviewers that we liked working with, that we might not know personally, but more established. We know we can trust their opinions, their judgment on articles. So we think that those select group of people would end up being on. We'd ask them to be on the editorial board to serve as sort of vetted peer reviewers. I think we're only giving a month turnaround time, I guess, for our peer reviewers. I think that's right. Yeah, we're doing a month turnaround time. So that's how it is right now. And
I think for us to start, too, we kind of wanted, I don't know if this was the right way to do it, but we wanted to do everything ourselves so we could really learn all parts of the process for the first issue. And then at that point, then we'll bring on other people and go from there.
Awesome. And in terms of seeking out reviewers, are you guys looking within your network of colleagues? How are you going about finding the right people to reach out to?
Yeah, we did ask people that we know. We sort of hustled some people that we knew and said, hey, you want to be a peer reviewer? But we're also we put out calls on social media, on Facebook. Librarians love Twitter. So I put some announcements out on Twitter, and I've gotten some responses through that, so I'm pretty pleased.
That's really cool. Using Twitter, that's awesome. I wonder if other journals are doing the same right now. And I had a question just sort of in general for everybody. What suggestions do you have for new journals in terms of attracting submissions? It can be difficult for a journal just starting out to gain, a following, to have people be aware of them. What suggestions do you guys have to get that submissions following and start having them come in? Olav, if you want to start?
Sure. So it's interesting you mentioned Twitter, because I think that was something that was actually very effective for us. We hadn't been planning that originally, but somebody that we knew, so we started out thinking that we had sort of a kind of quiet marketing period where we didn't really try to kind of publicly make people aware of it, but we went to our friends. We sort of said, look, this is what we're thinking about starting for a journal. We started this process roughly 10 months before we started accepting any papers. And the idea was to, both get the word out there that this was going to open up, as well as to, get people's feedback on whether or not they thought that this was going to be an attractive option for them. because we knew if we didn't get submissions that the journal wouldn't survive.
Awesome. And to move on to a different topic, but another one that I think new OA journals are really concerned about, I wanted to talk about income briefly. So Molly, to turn it to you then, in terms of income model for the reading room, have you guys thought about that at all yet? Do you have any plans in place?
Do we have any plans in place?
Well, we did receive a small grant from the UB Libraries to launch the journal, which pays for a certain number of submissions through Scholastica. But beyond that, we're hoping that that amount of money will lead us to when we can generate some income from indexing.
Okay, and can you explain that a little bit? How would you be able to generate income from indexing?
We're not the most well-versed in this, but one of our co-workers he runs an open access journal, and he sort of explained the ropes to us. But I believe after a certain amount of years, once you're picked up by the bigger databases like EBSCOhost, royalty checks, I don't think anything huge will come in, but you'll be able to acquire royalties from certain library databases.
That's interesting to know. I wasn't actually aware of that. I'm sure that would be helpful to people in our audience as well. And to sort of switch topics again, although it's convenient we just brought up indexing, Molly and Amy, I wanted to ask you first a little bit about indexing, and could you go a little bit more in depth about your indexing plans? What do you think are the most important indexes to be in and why, and how are you sort of approaching getting into those indexes?
I think eventually, there are some indexes that you do want to be in. You want to get picked up by Google Scholar. But another big one for library science is called ULRIX, and I know that's also big for other disciplines too. But I don't know. I think we're under the impression that it's going to take a while for us. Just starting off, I think it'll take us probably a while to get picked up. And I'm not sure if it's just the nature of our discipline or that's how it goes for all journals, but we'll get there. But I don't think that right now that we're not indexed, it doesn't seem to be influencing the submissions. People, I think, are real happy that they have found a place where they can publish. And, librarians love open access, so I think they're excited about that, about just publishing. And I don't think, impact factor really affects it right now.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome that you're getting submission interest already. And Ola, for you with sociological science, how did you guys approach indexing, and where are you at within the sort of indexing realm as a newer journal?
Yeah, so I don't think we're indexed hardly any place yet, although Google Scholar does pick up anything that's published in sociological science, which we think is important. Obviously, a lot of people use that for searching these days, so that is a way to find relevant papers. I think, obviously index is important. I think, though, that it may be a little bit less important today than it would have been, say, 10 years ago. When we started, we were quite worried that no one, except for senior faculty, would consider submitting papers to us because everyone else would sort of worry about the index factor and whether or not it would count towards their tenure. And in fact, we've been pleasantly surprised. I would say roughly 50 to 60% of the submissions have come from assistant professors and graduate students. And I think for them, the fast turnaround time, potentially being published in, having a decision in 30 days and actually having your article in print probably 90 days after submission is a huge benefit for them. And so that may more than outweigh whatever cost there might be to the fact that we're not on, say, the Web of Science. Eventually we'd like to get there. I think that, kind of achieving all of the goals that we'd like to have will require getting there, but I know that the process of getting into, say, Web of Science requires that you have several years of articles that you can point to show how many references or citations they're getting from other people.
Sure, and sort of a question for all of you, have you thought of mapping out a plan in terms of indexing? Do you have like a list of the indexes you would like to eventually be in? Is that something you would like to do? Molly, I'll start with you.
Did we plan that out?
Not so much.
No.
I think that's something that will happen 2 and 3 years down the line. So I think for now we're just focusing on getting the journal up and running, getting some good submissions in, and then maybe 18 to 24 months from now we'll really sit down and hash that out.
Yeah.
Sure. And Olav, how about you? Have you guys made any sort of list of indexes you'd like to be in or a plan?
Not really. I mean, I think the one that stands out for us would be Web of Science. I think we recognize that, the most important thing for us to do is to attract and to accept high-quality articles, and then the indexing will naturally follow, because then the indexes will want to have us included in them.
Sure, absolutely. And sort of in the same realm of trickiness as indexing, I wanted to talk about impact factor a little bit. And I wanted to start with you, Olav, and ask, where do you think OA journals fit within impact factor? And what do you think is more important, if either, citation impact or alternative metric level impact?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. So, I mean, impact factor is I'd say a very rough proxy for what people believe is sort of the average quality of the journal. I mean, I think our belief as an editorial team is that we would rather just accept papers that we think are good, hope that the community agrees that these are papers that deserve attention, deserve to be published, and not worry too much about the impact factor. I do think we have when it comes down to it, we should have a natural advantage in getting a good impact factor, in the sense that we are, we're moving manuscripts through very quickly, right? So everything that we publish is fresh, in a sense. And I think that one of the reasons some journals have lower impact factors is they're publishing things that by the time it appears in print is almost out of date. So we don't have to worry about that. What we've been quite happy with is, now there's a lot of metrics that you can look at besides impact factor to sort of track the attention that you're getting. So we've been paying attention to, how many people are downloading the papers, how many people are reading the abstracts, are we getting Twitter activity, so people are pointing to the papers on social media, and that all, I think, is, those are like leading indicators of what's going to be the likely future impact of an article.
Absolutely. Do you guys use an alternative level metric service, just out of curiosity? Do you have any suggestions for new journals in terms of gauging their metrics?
Yeah, so I mean, we've basically been using Google Analytics for sort of following a lot of this, as well as sort of tracking on Twitter. So we are not using any service beyond that we'd have to pay for. Part of that is that we're trying to run things very lean. So maybe at some later point we would think about subscribing to a service that would provide even more information. But I think for what we're interested in right now, it's been pretty effective.
I think it's great that you bring up Google Analytics too. It's really such a powerful tool. I would suggest for anyone in our audience who isn't familiar with it to really explore it, because there's so much that you can learn about your website. Molly and Amy, how about you guys? Have you thought about impact factor, and where do you sort of see citation versus alternative level type impact?
I think library literature is weird because no one outside library literature is citing library literature. Right. So it's our impact factor. It might be a little skewed. I mean, there are in the library literature, there are some very well-respected journals out there, and one of them is open source. Yeah, right? Or open access. I mean, I'm sorry. And so I think our goal is to get up there. Like, if we can become a well-respected journal. And I think something that hasn't really been mentioned before is that that we haven't talked about yet, is that I think we've been pretty lucky that we found a niche that people want to publish in this area, and there hasn't been a good outlet for them to publish in earlier prior to our existence. So I mean, maybe I sound a little conceited in saying that, but I think that says a lot about. I mean, it says a lot about the state of library literature, but it also, I think if if we're able to produce quality foster quality articles, that'll be great.
Yeah, and I think for librarians too, especially librarians going through tenure, I mean, this is a peer-reviewed journal, and a lot of the people who are going to be writing for us are going to be people going through tenure. For librarians, especially, kind of the impact of your work is addressed through people within your field when you're going through tenure, so external letters and reviewers that look at your work. We really kind of depend on them to place your scholarship within the field. So that's kind of another measure that librarians use. And for us too, we also use Google Analytics. So I think librarians, just in general, are really open to different ways of measuring success and impact.
Yeah, and it seems with the OA movement that what you said, different ways of measuring the impact, that's really, such a thread of this is how do we measure it, because the current systems don't necessarily always jive with what journals need. So sort of to have a final wrap-up question, kind of a big question, but I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. I'm wondering, if you had to start your journal over again, what would you do differently? And obviously for you, Molly and Amy, I know that you're just starting out. So for you, I'm more curious, and I'll ask you guys this question first. I'm wondering, what have people told you along the way? What have you learned that's been especially helpful to you that you're now going to implement? Just essentially, what has been your learning curve and what has been the most useful information that you've gotten?
Deep. It has been a steep learning curve. I don't know. I mean, I think if we did this again, we would do it at a slower time of the academic calendar year, for sure.
Yes.
We've gotten some really great advice from our colleagues and the librarians that we work with, just about to kind of take it slow and take your time, and there's no rush. So, we spent the summer kind of planning the journal and then just launched a couple weeks ago. I don't know, what else?
I'm trying to think what other people told me.
Well, they did tell us to get an editorial assistant.
Yes, editorial assistant, yes.
So someone to help with kind of the everyday correspondence and monitor social media and maybe post things on social media so that we have time to do kind of the more heavy lifting involved in the journal. I think that would have been extremely helpful had we done that off the bat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Ola, to turn the question over to you, and for sociological science, what would you have done differently if you were starting the journal over today? What have you guys learned along the way that's been especially important?
Sure. I mean, I have to say, I think we've been pretty lucky in terms of, a lot of the decisions that we made have worked out well. I think we did a lot of things right. I mean, we incorporated as a nonprofit beforehand, and we've done tax filings. We had an editorial assistant in place. So a lot of those things, have worked out well. I will say that, part of that I think was benefit of, we sort of naively thought we were going to start very quickly. I think our original projected launch date was January 2012, and our actual launch date was, September 15, 2013. And so part of it was, as we sort of thought about things, we sort of realized that there were a lot of things that needed to be put in place. I think one of the things that worked very effectively for us is that we started out with just a couple of us, and we kind of set down what the vision for the journal would be, and then we asked people to join that vision. I actually think that was really important, because one of the things that we discovered, even when we started going to a group of 5 or 6, is that people started to have different ideas, and I think if we had started at that group size, it would have been very hard to get convergence on anything other than maybe just looking like a traditional journal. So having started out and kind of asking everyone to buy into this kind of different version for how a journal should operate, I think ended up actually being quite important to us being able to start effectively. So I mean, I don't think there's that much that we would change, other than maybe if we could have gotten a gift to get us financially going on an even better track. But other than that, I think we're quite happy with the decisions that we've made and with how things have progressed. The acceptance for the community, I think, for 1 year in has been fantastic.
That's awesome. And just in terms of a final question to wrap up as well, I'm just wondering for our listeners and viewers out there who are interested in starting a journal, do you guys have any sort of targeted advice to them of something that you think they should be looking out for, paying attention to? I know that's sort of a broad question, but I'm just wondering if someone came to you, what sort of advice would you tell them? Molly, I'll start with you.
I think definitely, and I sort of alluded to this before, I mentioned it before, was you have to, I think finding a niche is really important. For us, if we just started another academic library journal, I don't know how that would distinguish us from our peers and encourage submissions. So I think, honestly, yeah, finding a niche, something you're really interested in, because I have a feeling we're going to be doing this for a while, or stuck with this for a while. So, yeah, I think finding a niche of something that you think is important.
It's definitely true. And Olav, you guys have a very niche-based publication as well. I'm sure that was a big factor. What advice would you have for a newer journal editor?
Well, I think that's right. So I think it's important to find a niche. Now, it's interesting. Our niche, I think we think of ourselves as a general sociology journal. So we're not a niche in terms of the topic, but we do feel like there was sort of pent-up demand for a different type of journal. And we tried, and so we were very systematic about thinking about what were the things that we thought were dysfunctional about some traditional journals, and how could we design a journal that would avoid a lot of those problems. And that's one of the reasons that we have very fast turnarounds. It's one of the reasons that we decided to just have acceptance and rejection and no revise and resubmit category. And I think that's been one of the reasons that we've gotten a lot of pickup. So I do think that there's a lot to this idea of kind of think about what might be something that you can do different, and what are some of the unique advantages of say open access online journals. There's certain constraints that don't exist that you have in a traditional journal. So one of the things that we thought was very powerful is we have no page limits, right? So we can really treat publication as being above a bar, rather than trying to select which are the best 3 or 4 publications we got in some period of time. And that changes the nature of decisions that you make. You really think about making your decisions purely based on quality, and you can also take risks on things, because in some sense the opportunity cost of losing something that could be a big publication ends up being bigger than the opportunity cost of taking something that maybe people don't find that interesting.
Sure, absolutely. And definitely, I think you make a great point that with online journals and using new technologies, I mean, it's true. It's sort of you could do what you want now. There's so many ways to restructure and shape journals, and the power to do it more quickly. So that's an awesome thing for the future of open access. So to wrap up, I wanted to thank you all so much again for being a part of this Hangout event. Ola from Sociological Science and Amy and Molly from the Reading Room, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone again for tuning in, and to our panelists, and we hope everyone has a wonderful Open Access Week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.